I'm not blaming George Bush, but I don't want Jeb Bush to say, my brother kept us safe, because September 11th was one of the worst days in the history of this country.
Donald Trump, in our interview, standing firm on his statement that President Bush did not keep this country safe. And we're back now with the panel. Brit, your reaction to the Trump interview, his comments about Bush and 9/11, and the whole thing.
You did fine. He did fine. And I say that meaning that to his supporters, who are a pretty stable 20 to 25, 27% of the Republican electorate, he did everything we're accustomed to seeing him doing that they love. Blunt, outrageous at times in certain ways, but highly entertaining. And I could see as you were doing the interview that you were cracking up yourself. You can't help it. It's what makes him so compelling, which is at the core, I think, of his standing in the polls right now.
I have got to tell you, Lisa, I know all of us dismissed Trump early on. All of it, the so-called experts, his summer fling, momentary amusement. As I watched that interview and I heard what he had to say about the country and about trade and about losing and just the sheer force of his personality, I am beginning to believe he could be elected president of the United States.
Well, I'm not going to take that bet, but I will say by the conventional rules of politics.
Well, you would take that bet. You think I'm wrong?
I mean, I'm not going either way.
Okay.
I don't know, because by the conventional rules of politics, this is a guy that should have been out of this race a long time ago. His numbers should have dropped after the summer, maybe even before, and we shouldn't have him being such an outsized presence, the front runner in this primary, but he remains so. So he's defying all these rules. We have no reason to expect that he won't continue to defy these rules. The next debate will be a really interesting moment to see how he does. He did sort of seem to fade from the stage a bit when the last debate got a little more policy-oriented. He also started to look a little bored. I mean, let's be honest.
It was 3 hours. I was bored,
It was very
too.
long.
It was
very tiring. I mean, flying around in your jet from your various penthouses across the world is an awful lot more fun than running for president, which turns out it can be kind of grueling and hard. So there is a question, I think at some point, does Trump himself get tired of this process? Doesn't seem like that's happening now.
I got to tell you, in the time I spent with him, I don't think he's the least bit tired of this. He flew up for an event in New Hampshire on Friday. He was down in Virginia, not just to do the interview, he was making a speech in Virginia. George, and I know you're going to just look at me and shake your head. The voters are angry. They're fed up. They want something different. They want somebody to knock down the pillars of the temple. He's their man.
I know someone who's a real political seasoned veteran who saw a gathering of Hispanic businessmen in Virginia. Half the room of Hispanic businessmen, this veteran estimated, were for Trump. Now, again, Brit says it's outrageous what he said. Well, it's just not factual. I mean, he said you can't buy a television made in the United States. When he gets to South Carolina, the third state in the nominating process, he can go visit the factory where they're making televisions in South Carolina.
Wait. I mean, there are a lot of people who say it, and I have to say I agree. We don't make things in this country anymore.
But we do. We make televisions in South Carolina.
Okay. Maybe they make TVs, but Zenith, Motorola, remember all the great America, RCO, all the great American TV companies? They're all gone.
Not all.
Well, most. You don't think there's a legitimate complaint that we don't make products in this country?
I do not. I think that in fact, we're delighted and not complaining about the fact that the iPhone you have in your pocket says designed in California, assembled, not manufactured, assembled in China from parts from all over the world. The idea of where you manufacture a product in today's world makes very little sense.
May please direct all of your emails to Mr. Will. Go ahead.
Well, I maybe in the same vein as George, I do want to bring this, I hope, a little bit down to earth, because that Trump interview, which you did so well, affected me on two levels. Like, I think everybody at the table, I found myself smiling and laughing at times at his performance and feeling very entertained. But when I actually read the transcript of it, right, and looked at the actual words coming out of his mouth, none of it made any sense. He said, we have too much predictability in this country. I want to be unpredictable. Well, that is a new campaign slogan, right? Vote for me, who knows what I'll do in the White House. I mean, the next minute after he says how great it is to be unpredictable, he says we absolutely must defund Planned Parenthood, right? He waffled on affirmative action. Now, that's an issue that's been out there many years. It's a fully digested issue in the political system. Lots of people have a position on that one way or another, not Donald Trump, who wants to be the leader of the conservative party in this country. So it's this incredible disconnect between the affect and the demeanor and the show that he puts on and the actual substance behind it, which I insist is still lacking. You're right, he's tapped into a great deal of angst, and people don't like the fact that, you know, quote unquote, we don't make anything in here in this country anymore. That too is a bit of a myth for the reasons George says. But what we're really seeing here is a huge demonstration of the difference between feeling and fact in politics.
All right, let's turn to another big subject, big news this week, and that was President Obama, who made a big reversal on Afghanistan after pledging for months that he was going to pull all U.S. troops out of Afghanistan except for about 1,000 that would have been at the U.S. Embassy as a contingent to safeguard that. He announced this week that he is going to keep 9,800 troops in Afghanistan basically through next year, trending down to 5,500 by the time he leaves office. Here's the president.
While America's combat mission in Afghanistan may be over, our commitment to Afghanistan and its people endures. As Commander-in-Chief, I will not allow Afghanistan to be used as safe haven for terrorists to attack our nation again.
Brit, why do you think the president changed his mind? And like Goldilocks, is it too much? Is it too little? Or the 9,800, or is it just right?
On point number one in your question, I think he changed because he's afraid we're going to have an obvious catastrophe on our hands in Afghanistan and end up sort of back where we started while he's still president. That is something to which he is very averse. He prefers to have his failures become manifest most clearly after he's gone. On the second point, we're losing ground now over there. Our mission, our cause, our hoped-for result is fading with about 10,000 troops present. So what he proposes to do is to continue that troop level, which isn't enough, but it may be enough to stave off an utter collapse. It's not enough. If he wanted to fix this or to change the fortunes, he'd have to do more. He doesn't want to do that.
You talk about the fact that he doesn't want to see a disaster. In a sense, wasn't it two competing legacies? On the one hand, he really wanted to be the president who brought everybody home, but on the other hand, he didn't want to be the president who saw another Iraq and Afghanistan.
Well, exactly. And Afghanistan has repeatedly been categorized by Democrats as a good war. That was the one where John Kerry said we took our eyes off the ball, Afghanistan, in order to go fight in Iraq. So there's a certain attachment, political attachment to the Afghanistan effort that does not exist in his mind, I think, and other Democrats for other parts of the world.
Chuck.
Well, I mean, the big event recently in Afghanistan was the takeover of a large city called Kunduz by the Taliban, which then was followed by this ugly incident where, in the course of trying to retake it, we accidentally bombed a hospital and so forth. And I think that may have tipped the balance. The president was not eager to do what he just did, but that huge, undeniable failure of the policy forced his hand. And now it's true, as Brett says, what he's doing is just enough, he hopes, I think, to hold this thing together until the next president can inherit it and figure out what to do.
I mean, that's a hell of a strategy, isn't it, George? If Chuck is right, let's just sort of keep it together, keep it its head above water until it's somebody else's problem?
Well, I think the president deserves credit for changing his mind and halfway at least accepting the prevailing narrative in this town, which is that if we had just left 10,000 troops in Iraq, the dissolution of that country into an almost failed state would not have occurred. The president has to make a very difficult calibration. How much that we do on behalf of the Afghan security forces is so much that they never quite step up and take full responsibility. Advisors and air power, that's the president's recipe, and it seems to me worth a try.
You know, Lisa, obviously this is going to play out in the 2016 race, and you know, I wonder, for Hillary Clinton, who is going to be tied to Obama foreign policy even if she left in 2013, is it good or bad to keep those 9,800 troops? I mean, what's the feeling among Democrats about our continuing commitment in Afghanistan? And I guess you have to also say, as compared to the possibility that it all goes to hell.
It's a difficult situation for Hillary Clinton. She's running in a primary with an electorate that wants out of these wars, but at the same time, she's trying to cloak herself in the legacy of a president who remains popular with Democrats. That's why she wasn't itching to talk about this. She talked about it in an interview when she was specifically asked. It wasn't something that she was out there advertising her views on. And when she did make her comments, she reserved the right to reassess in January 2017 should she win the White House. It's not a great issue for her. I don't expect to hear a lot about it.
But on the other hand, she did say, and did differ from the president in saying that she would impose a no-fly zone in Syria. So, I mean, there's always that kind of uncertain question. Is she to the left, or because her natural instincts going into Iraq,
Right.
Libya, seem to be for intervention?
I think that's right. You remember 2008, she's naturally more hawkish than him. We'll see some of that come out for sure in this race.
All right. Thank you, panel. See you next Sunday.